Good evening, everybody. Lovely to see you all again. This is yet another MWO in conversation, and a slightly less formal evening tonight as we bring a few members of the band together to see each other, people we've not seen on screen for a while, and certainly not seen on screen in conversation. Today we're going to talk about the band and our influences from banding and our experiences of banding, and what we enjoy about MWO and what we're looking forward to when we get back to playing, when it's safe to do so. So it's nice to be joined by various members of the orchestra today. And as with all these chats, this will be recorded and put out on our social media for our other members, and also on YouTube. So if you're watching in the future, you are very welcome, as always. Over the last series of In Conversations, we've usually started by finding out how some of our own members and some of our other guests got into music, and how did people start playing and end up sort of taking on music either as a career or as a hobby. And I'd like to do the same tonight. So just because this is the way people appear on my screen, I'm going to start with Dave. Dave Matthews, our timpani player and tune percussionist and kick player on When You Twist His Arm. Dave, how did you start playing, and what got you into music?
I guess, like Bill Connon was saying last week, my first introduction to music really was going to the Philharmonic Hall with the junior school. We went to see the orchestra, and for some reason our school was seated in the choir stalls, so we were sat behind the band, and I was sat behind the timpani player. I thought this sounds really good. I fancy this. So,
and the rest was history.
I guess so. So I went home and said, "Oh, I love this music. I want to be involved with music." So my dad called in a second-hand shop down in Seacombe and brought home an old tenor banjo.
That's so close to a timpani.
I thought I didn't really want to play the tenor banjo.
Nobody wants to play the tenor banjo.
So I went to the music shop and I bought a tune a day for the tenor banjo, and it showed you where to put your fingers on the strings and play little tunes, but it didn't tell me how to tune it. So I couldn't understand why the tunes, I didn't recognize any of the tunes I was playing.
Oh, were you using an out of tune a day?
Yeah, probably. So I took the strings off and bought some drumsticks and played on the skin of the tenor banjo.
That's very funny. I play in a 1920s band with a very good banjo player, and we were doing an outdoor gig, and we'd just been sort of hustled onto stage, and everything that could possibly go wrong could go wrong. I was one of two frontliners, a trumpet player, and I was on clarinet. We had a bass saxophone and my friend playing the banjo. And he called a tune and said a key, and somehow me and the trumpet player heard a different key, and the bass sax player and the banjo player. So we started off in two different keys, so that was a nightmare. Then once we'd sort of figured out what key we were all playing in, the bass saxophone player's reed broke, so we lost the bass line, and he's busy trying to change his reed. And we're fumbling through this tune, and comes to the banjo solo, as two of his four strings break and ping off. So he did the whole tenor banjo solo by just going dum da dum da dum da dum on the skin of the banjo. So yeah, you weren't too far off playing drums on the banjo, I guess.
Yeah, that was a good start anyway.
Yeah. And where did you progress from that after?
So once I showed a little bit of an interest in drums, I got introduced to a girl who lived a couple of roads away from me, and she was the drummer in the Ivy Benson band, which you may have heard of. It was the all-girls band.
Yeah.
And she was the drummer with them, and they used to do the summer season in the Isle of Man at the Villa Marina. But this was out of season, so she was at home for the winter. So I went round to her and started taking drum lessons from her. So that kind of started me off, and then we joined I mean, in the early 60s, everybody was in a band doing something. So they used to call them beat groups then. They weren't bands. Bands were things that you blew and that. Saxophones and trumpets and trombones were bands, but guitars and drums weren't bands. They were groups, beat groups. So that's really where my drumming started, playing in groups around Liverpool in the 60s.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Gosh, interesting stuff. Thanks, Dave. Gareth, where did you start playing? Where did your love of music come? Because you're probably, looking at who's joining us tonight, you're probably one of our most recent members of MW, actually.
Yeah. I started playing the piano when I was about 10, and I'm one of a family of seven children, and I'm the sort of second youngest. So I think basically all the children in the had tried to play piano, and most of them sort of failed because they got these sort of horrible piano teachers who used to whack their knuckles when they got it wrong. And I wasn't too bad, so I quite enjoyed that. And then we moved house and moved down to Southampton, and I went to secondary school in Southampton, and basically when I carried on playing. I was still playing piano then, and when it came to O levels, they said you had to play an orchestral instrument if you wanted to do O level music. They said, and my dad had this battered old trumpet. He said, "Oh, you can play that, that'll do."
Yeah, that'll do. There you go.
And it was a really awful trumpet, It really was battered. I mean, it wasn't. I think I decided it wasn't just me; it was the instrument. It wasn't very good. It didn't sound very good. So, but I did. I took, I took lessons at school, but I was still much more keen on the piano. So I didn't really do much practice on the trumpet. I used to practice once a week before the lesson, sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh my goodness! I've got a lesson tomorrow. Quick.
Yeah. So, but I did join the school orchestra, and wasn't too bad. I didn't completely disgrace myself. I carried on doing that until I left school and went to university and put the trumpet down and never picked it up again.
Right, until you came back to that, until you joined band.
Yeah, well, more or less. We moved eventually. After many moves, we ended up living in Devon, and my mother was very ill, and eventually she died, and she left us all some money. And I decided I'd buy myself a decent trumpet with it, So I bought myself a trumpet, and then my wife said, "Well, you can't just you can't just tootle around by yourself. You should have some lessons." So I started having lessons, and had those for about 9 months, a year, and at least I could still remember the fingering, so I suppose that was good. And then basically we moved up here, and I retired from my job at the Met Office, and we moved up here, and then we started looking around. My wife's a keen singer, so she wanted a choir to join, and we looked around and found you.
Yeah. We are everywhere. We are omnipresent.
We'll take anyone. So I thought, well, I'll give it we did go to see you at the junior school in Southport. You were doing a Christmas concert.
Oh yeah, lovely, with the choir and everything.
Yeah. So I thought, oh, they're quite good, They're not brilliant, but they're quite, they're not too good. You know what I mean? There's nothing worse than some of these, like these brass bands, put you off a bit, doesn't it? So I came along and introduced myself to you, didn't I? I remember you saying, "What do you play?" And I said, "Trumpet." And you sort of went,
Oh, I would never do such a thing. Don't you play trumpet? Never mind. It's better than a tenor banjo, that's for sure. Tony, you joined us on clarinet quite a while ago, I think. And how did you get into music? What got you playing?
Well, I suppose it was the first introduction to instruments at school, and when I was probably about 11. And it started off on the basis of the instrument you played depended on how tall you were. I was one of the tallest in the class, and I was initially nominated, selected to play the double bass. And then it went round the rest of the class really in height order. So if you were of, shall we say, short stature, you ended up playing the violin. And then we'd been round the whole class, and then the teacher in charge decided to say, well, is anybody left-handed? So I put my hand up, and that said, right, I'm now playing in the wind section. And then those who were left-handed were then sent out into a rather much smaller room, and we then started to blow on a variety of mouthpieces. So we passed the mouthpieces round from person to person. They were actually dipped in Dettol in between. So
delightful. That's going to get you playing, isn't it?
A Dettol tasting mouthpiece. And we passed each one round. I didn't get any sound out of a trumpet. A bit of a sound I remember out of an oboe, and I got a bigger sound out of a clarinet mouthpiece. And that's how I ended up playing the clarinet.
Gosh, yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah, it's amazing the way it's just presumed. There we go. Right, we'll whittle you down to them. Now we'll do this, and you make a sound of that, can't you? Yeah.
Relatively straightforward selection process, but I'm not so sure it's probably an appropriate one.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because until young people are given an opportunity to play, we really don't know, unless we've got, like Dave saw the drums, I said, right, that's what I want to do. You know, unless you've had that opportunity to see this sort of thing, you may be not sure. And we've talked in previous conversations about the aspirations of the young musicians and us as young musicians, and also how, you know, it's good for us to sort of pave the way for future musicians. And I know that the people who we won't talk to tonight have stated in previous conversations. So if you're watching in the future, go back and watch them, and you can find out how the people I miss out tonight started. But a lot of it was about seeing older musicians playing and sort of thing. That's what I want to do. That's what I'm interested in, not just because I'm tall and left-handed. So, you know, of course, everybody knows that tall left-handed people make the best clarinetists. I mean, I think there's been many a study that kind of thing. Honest. Jeff, we know how you started playing, but I want to talk briefly about Alison's brief brass career while she's here, because many people might not realize this, but your quiz name comes from your brief endeavor into brass playing, which I think should make a welcome return soon, to be honest.
Well, I'm eyeing up the cornet.
Very good.
Because it's in the corner. But no, I had a very brief dalliance with string in primary school, and that was really dull, and I just didn't get it at all. I wanted to play an instrument because I'd been to the Liverpool Phil and I'd seen Last Night at the Proms, and it was amazing.
You'd seen Dave pestering the timpani player at the back.
That was it. I think we may have been there some time apart. I'd like to think I probably wasn't there when Dave was 10, but you know. But no, so I had violin lessons, but I was just bored, and I didn't get any pleasure from playing on my own. I didn't see the point. And then I came to the pub after a concert with you guys that Jeff had played in, and basically had a few to drink and got bullied by you and your mother into playing some old baritone that you'd got hidden away somewhere.
Old baritone, that's my pride and joy, that baritone. It's a lovely instrument.
But it was amazing, and there is no other band really where I'd have had the chance to do it, because I couldn't play, I couldn't read music. Jeff taught me, and we practiced every single day, and he'd teach me just little bits from each piece he knew you were going to play. So I could always play a few bits in each piece if Chris poked me at the right time to start and stop. And it was great. I spent a year doing that, and I was getting better and better, and then I got pregnant and couldn't stay awake for the rehearsals. So
not because they weren't interesting, I hasten to add, just because you were tired. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking Eva's taken up the cornets. We've borrowed the band cornet, and I'm thinking, well, it's the same fingers.
Absolutely. Or you could borrow the baritone back, and soon all three of you could be coming along to band.
Oh, we're like the Von Trapps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We'll play The Sound of Music featuring Brass Trio. Yeah, it's lovely, and it's nice, isn't it, that MWO can offer that. You know, I mean, I can't think of many other community bands, or indeed any other community band, where, you know, the fact that you've never blown an instrument or could read music, you know, that's not an issue. That's quite incredible, isn't it, really? And I think it's because we're so large and we've got so many people able to help out, that there is that complete safety in numbers. And you know, as long as you can play one note, you're in, and then next week you come back and have a go at playing two notes. I think that's a really magical thing about our group.
And that's how we've got Eva going as well.
Yeah, exactly, doing the virtual performances in that way. Yeah,
it's a lovely ethos for a band. It's brilliant.
Alan seems to be disappearing and coming and going as we're chatting, so he probably realizes it's coming up to his turn to have a chat to us all, but maybe he'll come back. So I'll turn to my mum, or Doreen, or she's probably known as mum to most of the band, really. Obviously I know how you started playing, but maybe briefly, because you know, we've all got to go and do things tomorrow. How did you get on to playing the tuba?
Well, the tuba certainly wasn't my first instrument. My first instrument was the piano. In the days when it was fashionable to have an upright piano in your front room, my mum decided she was going to get a piano, and thought it would be quite posh, really, to have a piano. And I had showed an interest in going from school. Our headmistress used to take us to listen to the Philharmonic playing, so I had showed some interest in music. So my mum decided to get a piano and pay for me to have music lessons. So thinking, well, this is a big sacrifice for my mum to do this. I'll do my best to achieve this. So I had to go to a piano teacher whose name was Miss Crawley. Well, that's not. and then when Miss Crawley had taught us what to do with the notes, we had to go upstairs to her bedridden mother, who taught us the theory of music then. And this was also in the days when there weren't telephones in most homes. So I'd done my practice with Miss Crawley. Then I'd gone up to her mother for the theory. Oh, and by the way, Miss Crawley used to just hit you with a stick if you were doing, you know, she didn't tell you were doing wrong, you just got hit. So the whole experience wasn't wonderful, but I came out.
I'm looking at the faces on the screen of complete shock and horror. And whenever I think about you going to see the bedridden mother upstairs for the theory, I just think of Hello, you know, they had the cafe.
But the thing was, because she was a music teacher, when I came down the stairs, there was a phone in the hall, and I picked up the phone and heard somebody say, "Number, please." I put it down.
Somebody said, "Can we book you for a gig?"
So I continued with the music lessons, and I did quite well. I did quite well, really. My mum went to work and she was earning money, and she'd come home and she'd sit and listen to me practice, and she'd be, you know, telling me how wonderful I was. And in those days, we used to play out in the streets, and children would come knocking, "Can Doreen come out and play?" And my mum would say, "Not till she's done her music practice." So that was that. But then as I got older and got married and got children of my own, you know, but that you never forget how to read music once somebody's taught you to do it.
I don't know. Let's see what happens after lockdown on our first rehearsal back. Then we'll find out, won't we?
Yeah. So then moving forward, quite a long time to actually taking you to band, and the band was very small then. Eddie was taking the band, and they were very small. and they just needed a tuba player, didn't they? And I used to sit there waiting for you to finish to take you home again. And everybody just looked at me and said, the band did have the little tuba, which I've still got now, which still belongs to the band. So everybody just looked at me and said, so I thought, well, how difficult can it be? You know?
Well, the answer to that, playing the tuba, not very.
I don't know. So I've just stuck with it all the years. But again, you know, I would have never thought of playing the tuba, and I would have never belonged to anything, would I? I maybe had, you know, taken up perhaps the piano again later or something, but I wouldn't have thought of belonging to a band or anything like that, would I?
But you are, and as we all are, and I think that's an important part of what keeps our music making going, isn't it? The fact that we all play together, and you know, whereas perhaps, you know, real life kind of takes over a little bit, it allows an outlet for that, whether you've started
well, it was like that with Eddie, wasn't it? You know, I'm saying, you know, he said it doesn't matter if you just play what, you know, like you say to people, doesn't matter. You know, so I always felt grateful to Eddie in a way that he was willing to let me learn as I went along, and to be part of the whole thing was quite fantastic, and that encouraged me to try harder. And you often encourage me now by saying, you're not exactly the worst player in the band, but you never say who is. But
no, and I shan't. Alan!
you tried to say that I'm not. Anyway.
Let's move on quickly. Alan, how did you start playing? I think Alan might have frozen.
Not again.
Oh, he's sitting very, very still. We're going to come back to you, Alan. And
Can you hear me?
yeah, we're definitely going to come back to you, I think. Let's move on, and maybe you can send us your answer in an email. So I don't want to get too heavy really tonight, and like I say, if you're watching in the future and you want to find out about the people who are joining us that haven't chatted yet, you can check out the previous chats that we've done with people, and you can find out how they all got playing as well. I think it's really interesting to find out the history and people's backgrounds, and it's sort of things we don't usually chat about. What I'd like to open up to everybody now, in no particular order, is what's the funniest thing that's happened to you in your rehearsals or at a concert throughout your musical career? And I can think of several really. I mean, when work is booming, I'm doing 3 or 4 concerts a week, but I'm thinking particularly about MWO things, and I'm sure I'm thinking of a few that people here are thinking of as well. But one that particularly attains to me was one of the first nights I ever conducted MWO. I was deputising for Eddie, who couldn't make the rehearsal. I was probably about 16 or 17, and I was feeling quite proud of myself conducting the band, and sort of feeling like I sort of had a bit of an idea of what I was doing. And at that time, we didn't rehearse in the bigger room upstairs. We rehearsed in a much smaller room downstairs, which when we originally started rehearsing there, it was the men's changing rooms for the football team. So you can imagine how delightful that was on a Tuesday night. But then it had been turned into a more of a coffee bar space. It certainly wasn't large enough for the size of band we are now. But at the time, the band was smaller. It had a low ceiling, and it had those ceiling tiles, the kind of polystyrene ceiling tiles. And I'm getting into this conducting now, thinking, yeah, this is for me. I'm on board with this. I'm enjoying this. And I went for an exuberant third beat and let go of my baton, which then stuck through one of these ceiling tiles and hung there until I jumped up and got it. You know, and that always makes me laugh. I always think about that. Just that the entire band sort of playing away and then going, looking at this baton stuck in the ceiling. But has anybody got any other stories of a similar ilk that they'd like to share? Now stop it. You can't all shout at once. Sarah Queen.
I can think of one. And some people will definitely remember this one. It was a Farmhouse concert, which will give away a clue. And there were two drummers.
Oh, I think I know this story. I know this story. Yeah.
Precisely. So I'd been at university, so I'd not been to rehearsals in weeks and just rocked up for the concert. It might have been a December time concert. Was sight reading on the day, and we came to MacArthur Park, which I'm ashamed to say at the time I didn't know the song at all. So I had no point of reference. I didn't even know how it should have sounded. And
not the way we played it on that occasion, that's for sure.
Well, I don't think the way we played it helped in any way. So as you'll remember if you were there, MacArthur Park has a slow section and then like a double time, a faster section. And we had two drummers playing simultaneously. And when we got, it all started fine and it was great. And it got to the bit where the tempo changed and something didn't happen, or too much did happen, and I can't decide which, but the drummers were not together. It
is, in fact, an actual double time section, isn't it? So it goes from kind of a slow 4 rock beat into a double time rock beat. And this was two kit players, because don't forget, we're all encompassing and you know, everybody can get involved, and you know, that's absolutely what's at our core. But sometimes it can be to our own detriment, as it was then. And yeah, the double time was taken absolutely off the stick by one kit player and not by the other one, who played very strictly about half the speed of that. But, you know, not quite. I don't know. Something very strange happened, and we had two tempos, didn't we? And possibly neither of them matched up with my baton. I don't know. I can't remember. I can't remember how we recovered from that, but I definitely know we got through it. Can you remember how we managed to?
We basically just kept going and going and going and going, because it goes into a double time section and then it comes back out of it. Yeah. And once we got out of it, it all just resolved itself. But I just remember
often the problems are best left well alone, aren't they? It'll be fine.
I think the main problem was that there was not a bit of watching taking place in the drumming section. I'm not accusing anybody there, Dave, but it wasn't nothing to do with you. It was just the brass section. I just remember the brass section at the back. It was just laser eyes on Phil. Just follow the stick. It will work in the end. And
that's the only thing you can do in that kind of situation, isn't it? You've got to, you know, my job on a performance is to correct anything in real time and try and help anybody with any problems if it goes wrong, because we can't start and stop and rehearse in the middle of a performance. So if things do go awry, you know, that's why the conductor's there, along with a whole host of other reasons. But you know, that's a big one in performance. Any other funny moments in rehearsals or concerts? Chris?
Yeah, so there was a time then we were doing like a play day with a local school, and we'd gone off to do sectionals, and I noticed that the young lad on trombone was struggling with this slide. So I thought, I'll give it a clean for you and use some slide oil so it make it smoother. But I was doing that, got it really nicely smooth, and it was a dream to play. And a full rehearsal started up. We started playing. The next thing we knew, the slide was disappearing off, clattering through the stands and chairs, because he was just so used to just letting go of the slide, and it would just stay wherever he let go of it.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember you trying to move his slides like that when it. Yeah, it was like notched down the slide. Have I told you guys the story of the orchestra I was playing in once, and there was suddenly this clattering through the violin section. You know, it comes straight through the orchestra, through the violas and out through the first violins, and then a call from the trombone section was now this I must put this into context. The trombone player had only one arm, so he had a prosthetic right arm with an attachment to go onto his trombone slide, and we heard this slide clatter through the orchestra, and the call from the back was, "Could somebody pass me my trombone slide, please, and my arm?" And his arm had detached and got off with the slide, which was quite amusing. Yeah. Any other sort of funny stories from times playing, Tony?
My one and only occasion at Bickerstaff.
Oh well, I mean, the Bickerstaff March was always a comedic event.
Yeah. Arriving to park in a field, and then in fact having the marching with the music on the line kept slipping off. So balancing that, trying to sort of keep in step in the meantime, wondering where we were going. And then in fact, I think we had afterwards all squeezing into a small tent, small marquee, and sitting so tight that it was quite difficult to spread out. And then it rained in the late afternoon as well. And we had I don't think the sandwiches were particularly interesting. They provided us.
Sounds like a perfect gig, doesn't it?
It was quite entertaining.
Yeah, it sounds like the perfect MWO performance, Yeah, we did Bickerstaff for many years, but we found it was they just couldn't provide a staging and covering large enough for the whole band, so that's sort of where we're a victim of our own success, really.
Mine was the last one then.
Yeah, quite possibly. Alison.
Oh, just my favourite Bickerstaff memory is sitting in the audience, and I can't remember what you were playing, but it was lovely. And Kate was doing a beautiful flute solo, and the man on the PA went, "Now the band's having a quiet bit. There's been somebody lost a handbag."
Yes, I remember that. Yeah. I remember doing a big band gig once, and we were all set up on stage, and suddenly all the power went off in the theatre. The house lights came up. Well, it was, I say theatre, it was like a big sort of old working man's club with lots of seating. So all the power went off on stage, house lights came up, and the MC from the backstage went on the microphone, "Doris, your taxi's here, love." Then turned to the band and went, "Oh, sorry, lads, you can carry on now." Dave.
I can tell you a story about power going off. We were doing a dance at the Masonic Hall in Hope Street in Liverpool. It must have been about 120 people, and I had my drum stool, which I use now for the timps when I'm playing. It's a tripod, but it's got like tubular metal legs, and on this occasion the rubber feet had worn away, and I didn't realise that it was sitting on the mains cable that was feeding the whole band, and with sitting on the stool and gently moving round, it eventually cut right through the mains cable. There was a huge explosion. I shot out of my seat, and the whole building went into darkness.
And you've never been quite the same since.
No.
Mum, did you have one there? Did you have your hand up before?
Well, I was just going to mention Bickerstaff again and the marching, because the tubas and trombones are on the front row when you march. And, I was paying particular attention to my music and playing away. But then we had to turn onto the field, and everybody else turned one way, and I turned the other and went marching off on my own through the mud.
I remember that. The whole band went onto the field, and you went down the road that way, and you were still playing bum, 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 miles away. Miles away. There was...
Sorry, I must tell you, it was doing the similar thing. We were doing a big a parade at the police college, and Her Majesty's Inspector of Constabularies had come to inspect all the Merseyside police, and the band were playing, and we had to march past the dais, and then when we got to the end of the parade ground, there was a hedge, and we have to counter march. And I don't know whether you've done it before, but the trombones are at the front. And the trombone in the middle raises his slide and goes like that, and everybody then counter marches and goes back. Well, this guy was a new guy, and he didn't know what to do, and they started to, as they were getting near the hedge, they were trying to push each other to turn, and they were both pushing each other in opposite directions. And we just marched as a whole band right through this hedge and into the path that went right around the parade ground.
There's a Woody Allen film, isn't there? I can't remember the name of the film, but Woody Allen joins a marching band on a cello. He's playing cello. So he's there with a chair and a cello and a bow, and he sits down behind the band and starts playing, and they all march off. So he picks his cello up, picks his chair up, runs after them, puts the cello down, plays a bit, picks all his gear up.
Well, if you see the old Glenn Miller marching bands, he has a drum kit on the back of a Jeep and a double bass on the back of another Jeep, driving along with the band as they're marching along.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, I've done some funny gigs on the back of trailers and things like that in parades and stuff. And in fact, I did one on the top of a double-decker bus with a hop club group, and the double bass players playing on the top of this open top double-decker. And we're going through the streets, and there's some low-hanging trees. And the next thing, the scroll on the double bass gets caught on a branch on the tree. And we're only doing about 5 miles an hour. But he's playing away, and the bass got pulled out of the bus by this branch on the tree. So he's going boom, ba-dong, ka-dong, ka-doing. Pulling his bass back out of the tree, which was very funny. I had written down some sensible questions, but I'm having far too much fun, so we're going to leave them. And I'm going to go slightly more sensible and pose the question to us all. If you didn't play the instrument you do play, or instruments you do play, what would you play and why? There's an interesting question that's got everybody stumped. Nobody wants to play anything different. I think just before Sarah does answer, I have this sort of hankering after playing the trombone. Really, I think there's something about the trombone section in the band. Don't pull that face. And I did have a go on trombone because I can sort of do valves a bit, and I got to sort of grade 3-ish on my little P-bone and quite enjoyed it, but I found it very hard to remember where I was putting the slider. I needed to spend a lot more time with it than I could. But if I wasn't a saxophone and clarinet player, I think I'd probably look towards the trombone. Of course, I dabbled with tuba a bit as well, but there's something about the trombone section. They always seem to have a bit more fun, and they always seem very naughty, and I quite like that. Really. So Sarah,
I have to confess, I borrowed the trombone at the start of lockdown with the intention of learning it.
And how's it going?
I was doing quite well for the first 3 weeks. Then I was getting a bit fed up. So I think the grandchildren came to stay. So I put it in its case. I'm afraid it's been there ever since.
Possibly like a lot of the trombone section in our band. Really. It's a tough beast. I think it's quite tricky to play. Sarah, you had your hand up before I launched into my trombone, although you seem to have turned into your cat. Do that thing with your head again so we can get that recorded. We could look at
that. Adam Dutch, it says.
Yeah, what's your cat called, Sarah?
This one's Millie.
Millie. So Millie, if you weren't a cat, what would you play?
She'd be a banjo player, definitely.
Of course she would. She can talk to Dave. He's got a spare one. Strings and the skin's broken from the drumsticks. But...
Yeah. I would probably go for the French horn. Because they got all the good tunes. Simply for that reason. Or if I were to really go onto the dark side, I play the cello. If I could be bothered with the strings, the cello is a lovely instrument because they get a bit of bass line, they get lovely tunes, they get a bit of everything.
Yeah, so clearly in a tin band setting, it's euphonium for you then, isn't it? The tin cello. Yeah, you see. Oh, okay.
I'd rather have a French horn.
Tony, what would you play then if you weren't?
I'd probably go for drums.
Oh, talk to Dave.
Don't bother. No.
Oh.
Too noisy.
Yeah. No, I think they're quite fascinating to listen to, particularly some of the drum solos. I've never played them, but you know, they just it just feels as though there's when they're not there, you really do miss them.
The percussion section is so important to the band because I always describe them as the pyrotechnics of the band. They're all the special effects guys, aren't they? And it's all those little bits that really brings life and character to the music. You know, it's so important to have all that sort of stuff going in as well. And I think every musician should really have a basic grasp of playing a bit of drum kit. I don't know if you agree with that, Dave, as a kit player, but I think every musician, to get a good sense of pulse, should be able to play a few rhythms, I think, and get that kind of coordination going. And when I do musical workshops on sort of musicianship, I tend to try and get everybody to doing knee drumming and doing the kind of little rock beats and things on their knees and getting their limbs going and feeling that pulse. I think that's a really important skill to have, actually. So when it's safe to do so, and I know the committee are keen to do lots of sort of big play days and things once we can again, we might do a bit of a musicianship day and have a bit of fun drumming and things like that. Yeah, Mum?
Well, I think it's a mother's duty to get the pans out of the cupboard and a wooden spoon, and any child should be, taught to.
I've told you I'm too old for that now. You know, when I'm nearly 40, for goodness sake. You don't need to do that when I come around for tea. So as we come to the end of our hour this evening, there's two questions I'd really like to put to everybody, and the first one is, what's the one thing, or what is one thing you like most about MWO? What is the thing that really sort of gets you and you think, if you cut MWO in half, we'd perhaps have him running around the centre of us? Or what's really personal to you? What's the one thing you like most about Maghull Wind Orchestra and being a member of the Wind Orchestra?
Any standard of ability, I think that's a key feature for me of the orchestra.
Yeah, that's one of our big taglines, isn't it? Any age, any ability, no audition, no fee. And when I took over the directorship of the band, I was very keen to have that as sort of our tagline, because it makes it just open and accessible to everybody. And you know, just like Alison was saying before, it doesn't matter if you can't read music and don't know how to play an instrument. You know, you can still join, which sounds bonkers, but it does work. Yeah.
Good learning opportunity as well.
Absolutely. We try and run it like an educational thing. You know, I do try and, I know it doesn't always appear so, but I do try and think about the rehearsal process quite carefully, and also just the fact you're sat next to people who are more experienced, and you can goodness me, a very soggy Adam Dutch has joined us.
Hello.
You've let him in.
Yeah. So seeing as we've got 17 questions we've got to ask you now, Adam, to catch up on the rest of the chat.
Only 17.
Let's put Adam on the spot. Okay? What's the one thing you like most about MWO? Is it my good looks and witty banter?
Always.
Oh, of course. And then secondary to that,
the community is definitely it. The sense of community in the band, it's just lovely, and you know, everyone's there pulling for a shared kind of goal, no matter what their experience level or what their kind of, you know, how long they've been playing, what they've done, all that jazz. It's a lovely kind of group to play in.
Yeah, and I think we've managed to keep that sense of community even when we can't be together in real life, in the real world, in a real room, doing that, haven't we? You know, with evenings like that and other things. And I think whatever you sort of like about MWO, that would be one of your overarching thoughts. Does anybody have anything else they particularly enjoy about the band? Yes, Alison.
I like the fact that as an audience member, I went to see the Phil as a child, and they were inspirational, but they felt a very long way away from where I could ever be. Whereas MWO it feels achievable, because you know there's people in there that are beginners. So if you're in the audience and you can just play a little bit, it's like, actually you can get to that quite quickly. Yeah. And that's quite inspiring for people.
And the idea that you could join in, you could go and join in with that. Yeah, that's nice. I'm glad we portray that out to our audience as well. So what do we think as we return back, or as we hope to look to the future and returning back to rehearsals, you know, albeit maybe a good few months off from now and into next year, apart from the fact of playing again with other people, and, you know, when I say that, I mean as the entire band, you know, all nearly 100 of us, you know, obviously we're looking forward to playing with everybody again like that. But what other things are we looking forward to? What we're looking forward to the most about returning back to rehearsals? Is it a musical thing? Is it a social thing? Is it that sense of community? What's the thing we're most looking forward to when we return to rehearsals?
Outside gigs.
Outside gigs?
Yeah.
Like Big Stuff Tea Party?
That's top of my list.
Good. Why particularly the outdoor ones, Tony?
Oh, sorry, I don't mean outside being in the open. Gigs away from Maghull Town Hall.
From the rehearsals, yeah. So actually performing outside, bringing music live into the community for an audience. Yeah. I think I'd agree with you with that. You know, live music needs an audience. Otherwise, does it really exist? You know, is a performance without an audience? Let's have 1,500 words on that by next week.
You get it philosophical there, aren't you?
Yeah, it's very deep. You know,
if a tree falls in a forest.
Exactly. Yeah. If a trombone is left in the case, does it really play? You know. Yeah. But that's the thing. I mean, the whole thing about music is it is a sociable activity. We play music together with each other for other people to listen to, and the whole thing about performing and listening is engaging in this social activity. It is a social music. So yeah, bringing music back out to audiences is very important, and also the buzz you get from performing. The endorphins you get from that, I think I'm certainly missing. You know, I am definitely missing the endorphins you get from doing the pleasurable things like playing music in public, which can be quite an addictive thing, really. You know, it's a big buzz, isn't it?
It's not something that's easy to.
It makes the rehearsals more meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it gives you a focus, makes it more meaningful. Yeah, Adam.
I was just going to say it's not something that's easy to replace with anything else either. It's not, you know, it's not something that you, well, certainly I don't derive the same enjoyment from anything else apart from playing music live with other people.
No, and that's not to say you can't get enjoyment from other things.
No, not at all.
You can do now, but it is a different kind of feeling, isn't it? Totally. Yeah. And I think that's what defines us all as musicians, really, because we do get that buzz from performing. And it doesn't have to be as a soloist, but performing together in a group, you know, that gives you a real good buzz. Yeah, Gareth, did you have your hand up then?
Yeah, I said it certainly beats coming last in quizzes every fortnight.
Again, it's a different kind of feeling. Well, it has a certain effect on your mental health. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just you can't. If you're like me, you're only going to get so good, or so you're not going to get much better, really, because of the limitations. You can't. You know, I'd get drummed out of the house if I practiced every day, basically. You know, it wouldn't be popular. So you're never going to get really good. So it's better if you're with other people, because you can only play so many pieces by yourself, because they won't. You know, it sounds a bit naff after a while when you're practicing. So it's better if you're with others. You know.
And I think everybody in the band is improving all the time through the act of being part of the orchestra. So the Wind Orchestra, as you know, if you've been in it for a long time, or if you've been watching us for a long time, you know, through the years, the standard is raising all the time, and that's not just the band. Everybody in the band, I think, is probably getting a little bit better all the time as well. But the holistic sound seems to improve much quickly. and it does get better and better, and it's that doing it together and improving together and working towards the common goal. I'm certainly looking forward to rehearsing the band, because I'm enjoying the virtual performances. I'm enjoying taking part in them, and I'm enjoying hearing the finished product. You know, Chris does such a wonderful job with them. But I'm missing the rehearsal process. I'm missing going through parts with people and putting things together, and seeing people understand how the music fits together in the same room at the same time. I'm missing that process of actual rehearsal to then, you know, get the performance out, as Tony said, to the public. And for all you guys here, and anybody, all our members who hopefully will watch the recording, you know, I'm missing seeing you. You know, I'm missing the people. I'm missing seeing my mates. You know, I once, not so long ago, described MWO just a couple of weeks ago to a friend of mine. I said, MWO is like going to band with 100 of my friends, you know, and I think we probably all feel like that. So that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to that rehearsal process and working on music in great depth again, to get back playing, and hopefully we won't be too many months off that. In the meantime, it's been lovely to chat to you all once again on a Tuesday night in conversation. Thank you for taking part. Hope you've enjoyed having a chat. It's certainly interesting to find out a little bit of background about a few more members of the band, and I'm sure members watching will have enjoyed watching it as well. So we will see you next time. Quiz next week, and I'm back on the 20th with Bill Connor. So until then, stay safe, look after each other, and keep practicing, particularly if you've left your trombone in the case, Dave. Take care, everybody. Thank you very much. Good night.